Hello, this is Carlos from the Church of Christ channel. Please subscribe. Today is going to be another healing conversation, and we're going to be talking about why forgiveness is essential, part number 2. The next video, I'm probably going to do another real conversation of part 2 of America Has a Bullying Problem. Okay? This is Matthew chapter 18. Okay, the first time we talked about Joseph and his brothers. Now we're going to talk about a teaching that Jesus gave to his disciples. And so in Matthew chapter 18, we're going to begin with verses 21. Peter came and said to him, "Lord, how often shall my brother sin against me and I forgive him?" Very important question. Up to 7 times. And Jesus said to him, "I do not say to you up to 7 times, but up to 70 times 7. Okay? 7 is a number of completion within the Bible. Okay? But Jesus said not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Okay? Kingdom principles are diametrically opposed to worldly principles, okay? For this reason, the kingdom of heaven may be compared. Now here he goes into parable mode. So compared to a certain king who wished to settle accounts with his slaves. And when he had begun to settle them, there was brought to him one who owed 10,000 talents, okay? And obviously this was a lot of money. I don't know. So I guess it's saying here about $10 million in silver content, but worth much more in buying power, okay? But since he did not have the means to repay, he didn't even have the means to repay, his Lord commanded him to be sold along with his wife and children and all that he had in repayment to be made. The slave, therefore, falling down, prostrated himself before him, saying, "Have patience with me, and I will repay you everything." And he knew he couldn't repay that. He didn't even have the means to repay, but he told him to have patience. Okay, and I'll repay you everything. And the Lord of that slave felt compassion. See, the Lord of the slave felt compassion and released him and forgave him the debt. Okay, but watch what the other slave did. But that slave went out and found one of his fellow slaves. Okay, owed him 100 denarii. Now, let's see if they show that how much. The denarius was equivalent to 1 day's wage. So see, 10 million in silver content to just 1 day's wage. And he seized him and began to choke him, saying, "Pay back what you owe." So the fellow slave fell down and began to entreat him and saying, "Have patience with me and I'll repay you." And it said he was unwilling, however, he went and threw him in prison until he should pay back what was owed. So when the fellow slaves saw what happened, they were deeply grieved and came and reported to their Lord all that had happened. Then summoning him, his Lord, and said to him, "You wicked slave, I forgave you all that debt because you entreated me. Should not you also have mercy on your fellow slave, even as I have had mercy on you?" And his Lord moved with anger. So he was moved with compassion. Now he's moved with anger, handed him over to the torturers until he should repay all that was owed. So my heavenly Father also do to you, and if each of you does not forgive his brother from your heart. Okay, so a couple things stand out. I ain't gonna say just two. First, Peter asked a very important question. How often shall I forgive my brother's sin? And this is something that we all have to work on, okay? Then Jesus goes into this parable mode. Now you have the Lord, and then you have a slave, and then the fellow slave. So the Lord basically told the slave, first you need to repay me back this 10,000 talents, which we just deciphered is like $10 million in silver content. Okay? But he didn't have the means to repay, and he was going to be sold along with his family for the repayment. Well, he told asked his Lord to have patience with them, because that's a lot to pay. But then the Lord basically said, okay, I see the need to be compassionate. I release you and forgive the debt. But then this same slave went out and went to a fellow slave, and he only owed him a day's wage. And it's funny how in our society this same stuff happens. We beg and plead when something we know we can't really pay to get out of. We beg and plead for forgiveness, and then we turn around and somebody doesn't even owe us that much money, but we choke them and put them in prison. This is what this slave did to this fellow slave. So when people saw it, they was grieved, and then, told their Lord. Now the Lord went back to that slave and basically handed him over to the torturers, and he wasn't going to be able to pay it back. So this is what God does to those who won't forgive. And this is a huge lesson for us in Christians in the church. We have to learn how to forgive. It's not always easy. I'm not going to say that it is, but we have to learn how to forgive. Otherwise, you'll be just carrying all that anger and offense. And on top of that, this passage here is saying if you can't forgive your brother, God won't forgive you. And we know that the debt that we owe God, we can't even repay. Okay, but we expect our fellow man that doesn't really owe us really that much, to pay us back in comparison to God. You know what I'm saying? So this healing conversation is so important that we have to learn forgiveness. Okay, and this is Carlos from the Church of Christ channel signing off.